let's do a quick intro for the audience who probably don't know you.
So my name is Soundarya, not Pooja, but I think you know that, but I just want to make sure that they also know that.
Yeah.
Pooja is a nickname, and you guys are welcome to call me that. I am currently an associate product manager at Salesforce. So APM is the role that you get into right after college if you want to eventually become a product manager. So it's a stepping stone to becoming a product manager. Generally, people do an 18-month or 2-year rotation before eventually becoming a PM. I did my master's in management science and engineering from Columbia University. And before that, I was doing my bachelor's in technology from NIT Trichy in chemical engineering. And
wow.
Before that, I was doing my high school, and then before that, I was from a very small suburb called Patravakam, which is in southern India.
Okay, that is awesome. And actually, now I'm more excited because usually I don't do a lot of research when I'm doing the interview because I like to be curious during the interview. Yeah. And I say I'm curious because you did your bachelor's in chemical engineering and now you're in tech world. And most of my audience are coming from like different background and wanting to move to technology or IT field, or wanting to go from mechanical to business analyst, mechanical to product management. And there's myth and misconception that they cannot do. And now I feel good that you can burst that myth that you can because you've done it.
Absolutely.
And you're one of the example. So let's talk about your profile, GRE TOEFL, because everybody likes to know that. So
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see. GRE. So I took GRE twice, and the first time I was not at all happy with my score, and I know it was not a bad score. So I got 321. I believe I got 166 in quant, and just do the math, whatever verbal. So 166, 14, 155 in verbal. And I actually got a pretty good AWA score. I got 516. Wow. However, as soon as I saw the score, the first thought that came into my mind was, I have to take it again. Because I was taking mock tests just before the day of the exam, and I got 330 in all of them. So it just was baffling that I got 9 points lesser than the mock test. Anyways, so I took this GRE again, and second time I got slightly better. I got 328, 170 in quant, which was good, and 158 in verbal, and 516 in AWA. So I probably could have done it a third time, but I think you reach a point where you think that the effort put in is not worth the destination anymore. So
Wow. And
TOEFL. Right?
You're like probably the first guest on my podcast who has scored more than 325.
Oh, really? I'm honored.
And also one of the guests who's been in the Ivy League college. So let's talk about your colleges. Which colleges did you apply? Which universities did you apply?
Okay. Let's see. My top choice was Yale University. There is a specific program called the Silver Scholars Program, and it is unique because it is meant for someone who wants to do an MBA right after undergrad, which is pretty unheard of, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, in hindsight, I'm kind of happy I did not get into it, because I do think an MBA degree should be done after a few years of experience. That's when you can really reap the rewards completely. So anyways, that was my top choice back then when I was a bit more naive. My second choice was management science and engineering from either Stanford, Columbia. I also applied to Cornell and Dartmouth for the same program. And the third choice was a master's in management from HEC Paris. And also, I applied for a deferred MBA program at Harvard. So,
wow.
These were of course, I didn't get many of them. So I think you should not say wow yet.
I'm so impressed. I mean, just, I haven't met anybody who's applied to all these places.
Oh, really?
So you're the first one, so I'm wowing about that. So what all admits did you get, and what all admits did you get?
Let's start with the rejects, because that's how the timeline went. So It was 11:53 p.m. on 17th of February 2017, and I remember this because I wrote this in my book. I got my first reject from MIT. So I had also applied for something called a PhD CEP program at MIT. It was a mix between a PhD in chemical engineering and an MBA. Again, a very unique program that I found. It was the first reject I got, and that night was obviously very sad for me. And I got 2 more rejects in just the next week itself, from Yale, which was my dream university, and from HEC Paris, where I thought I did a very good job in the interview. So I got 3 rejects in a matter of a week and 10 days. And that crushed my motivation completely because just a year earlier, I had gotten into all the scholarships I applied to for, SNBOS, DART, and MyTax. So I was pretty arrogant in hindsight. Now that I think about it, I was very complacent. I just thought that I would get anything I wanted because of how my history was.
Right.
And I'm glad it brought me back to back to earth.
Yeah.
And then I began getting admits as well. I got admits from Columbia, Cornell, and Dartmouth. Again, in a span of 1 week. I don't know how it happened, but I chose Columbia in the end from that.
Why Columbia?
Why Columbia? I've had a lot of time to think about that question. And I really think I chose Columbia for New York. Because once again, I'm from NIT Trichy. Have you ever been to Trichy?
No.
No. So, at least when I was there, Trichy is a very austere city where there was just literally one theater that we could go to.
Yeah.
There was a place called Demora where we all went for giving treats.
Yeah.
That was one of the best restaurants, or one of the only restaurants there. Trichy is a city which has a lot of temples, and in fact, NIT I think is the monument in Trichy. So there was nothing to really sightsee for someone who's living there for 4 years. At least, maybe I didn't put in enough effort to do that, but at least for me, my entire life was revolving around NIT and not really in Trichy.
Right.
So I think that played a part in kind of nudging me towards choosing Columbia. Because again, Dartmouth is in Hanover, which is, again, it's a pretty rural area.
Right, yeah.
And Cornell,
so you just wanted like a big city life.
I think so. Again, it's all speculation at this point. And Cornell was also in Ithaca, which is, again, not a very city-like environment. So I chose Columbia. And of course, I also looked at the courses for all of the universities. And Columbia had a very interesting mix of courses, which was very execution-oriented. A lot of practical courses where I could work on projects. And it made sense to pick Columbia.
Now I'm very curious how your visa interview must be. Like they probably invited you and they said like, here's your visa. Why are you coming for visa interview?
Right. Again, actually it was a little bit like that. No, not exactly that, but I went up. I prepared for a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And obviously I went to all the Facebook groups, looked at previous interview questions, stood in front of the mirror, talked to myself a lot. And then on the day, I went there, and in fact, I forgot a very important document, my transcript, which I thought was very important back then. And I called my dad in the auto when I was going to the consulate, and I told him, Appa, whatever happens, please come give me this. I think I'll fail without this, so please come. Poor guy. I mean, he came all the way and he gave it to me, and they didn't ask for anything. I went there and they asked me my name, they asked me what university, they asked me for the GRE score, and it was pretty much it.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think, it's Columbia, and obviously they probably know that you're a brilliant student.
I mean, I am trying
You're
to
like,
be,
yeah, I am.
I am not. I mean, I don't know if I am, but
So what's the fees of Columbia? Because that's very expensive college.
it's a cash cow. So it is probably one of the highest fee that someone can pay. I paid $80,000 for 3 semesters.
Wow. And it's a 3-semester program?
It's a 3-semester program. And it's not there yet. The overall expense for living in New York and in Manhattan especially came up to $110K finally. So like tuition, food expenses, living, housing, all of that came to $110K. But the good news is I have paid all of it back right now. Thanks to Salesforce.
That is so awesome. That is so cool. I mean, you started really good, and then I was like, oh my God, that's going to take forever to pay off. But then you ended as like, oh, I did pay off. So
I'm actually quite proud of that because I told myself, whatever happens in the first year after I graduate, I have to pay my loan back. So I kind of, anything that I was not using for food and rent, I sent everything back to pay it back.
To repay. So did you take bank loan or?
Yeah, I took 57 lakhs from PNB, Punjab National Bank. Back then, they gave a pretty low interest rate, like 8.45%.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then I paid it back. I also got some assistance from the scholarships I got from JN Tata and KC Mahindra.
Okay.
So I'm still paying some of that back right now.
And did you work on campus?
I did, yeah. I had a very interesting role. So the good thing that I did was I was pretty proactive on on-campus jobs.
Yeah.
So I reached out to a lot of seniors and got some options that I could investigate further. So I went to the athletics office, the fitness center at Columbia.
Yeah.
And I remember it took me 3 tries for them to even talk to me about it. And finally they gave in and they said, okay, fine, what do you want? And I told them I want to be an undergrad athlete. So that was a very interesting role because it paid $40 per hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
But obviously there's a caveat. The caveat is that you can only work for 3 hours every week.
Oh.
But still, for someone who just wanted to work to, pay for food, it was brilliant because just in 3 hours, I made, $120. And I could make, if I taught in groups, I could make up to $300.
Wow.
So $60 per hour then. So that paid for my living expense.
Yeah, I mean,
and
that's awesome. And what do you have to do as an undergrad athlete?
I pretty much just had to teach algebra, mathematics, calculus to undergrad athletes.
Okay.
And I also learned in the process, which is great. And aside from that, I was also a course assistant. You probably heard of research assistant, teaching assistant.
Yeah.
This is neither. It's called a course assistant where all you have to do is grade someone's homework and assignments and papers. That's all.
Yeah, in Chico State, we had something called graders.
Exactly. And it pays lesser, but it's also lesser hours. So my strategy was work as less hours as possible because your main goal in grad school is to learn, to improve your value in the market.
Yeah. So let's talk about coursework because this is something I'm interested in learning. What is so special about that course? Because it's kind of a mixture of both. And what did you learn?
Yeah. In terms of what it entails, so it is called Management Science and Engineering. I really think they should rename it because it doesn't represent what the course is. But I had the opportunity to take half of my courses from the business school and half from the engineering school. I could also take from, say, journalism or public policy school if I wanted to.
Okay.
And they had these buckets. So right now, I think Columbia MSNE has specializations as well. It was not there back then when I was there. But I had to take 4 core courses. 3 of them were extremely math-oriented. Probability and statistics, stochastics, and optimization.
Ooh,
so
that's interesting.
It required a lot of foundational knowledge of mathematics, which quite frankly, I think the Indian crowd, we lacked that. Not as all of the students from France, they were really good at it. So whatever took them 1 hour would take me 3 hours at least. So I had to work my ass off and put in extra hours and do a lot more example problems to get to their level and do well in exams. So those were 3 core courses. The most unique aspect of my degree is the operations consulting course. It's called OpsCon for short, and it is a year-long course where there are no assignments, no exams, no theory. You just need to work with 3 startups in New York and help solve a problem for them for the entire year.
That is so cool. That is awesome. Yes, I can say that's the best part.
It's pretty interesting.
So, do they help you find the startups? Or?
Yeah. So it's taught by a very, very famous professor called Dr. Kachani. And so he was a consultant at McKinsey. He's from Harvard, MIT, very good pedigree. And so he has already found, let's say, 40 companies in New York or just around New York who are interested in participating in this with us. And then he brings that into the class. And the first class goes on for 7 hours. The first lecture with him.
7 hours?
Yeah. It goes from 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. I still remember. And you have to suit up before you enter the class. You have to be completely top to bottom suited up.
Formal.
Right. Everyone. And so you enter the class and then he gives a long introduction. He's a very interesting guy. And after that, he starts adding, putting people in different verticals. So he'd say, I think he wrote down 8 verticals called someone who is good at communication, someone who is good at mathematics, coding, and so on.
Yeah.
And then he'd ask you, where do you want to go and stand in this? And then people would go and stand in the respective vertical. And then randomly, he would pick, one from each and then make a group and be like, okay, fine. Now this is your group. You guys have to work together to solve this problem for these startups. And we also had to do an auction for getting the startup. So there were 40 companies, right?
Yeah.
So you can only work with 2 or 3 at most. So I don't exactly remember what happened, but yeah, in the end we picked 3 companies, and for an entire year we worked with 3 companies.
What was the problem did you solve for them?
So in my group at least, there were 8 of us, and what we did was we said each of us will work on only 2 projects.
Okay.
So, but overall we work for all 3 of them, which means for one company there were 4 people working for it. And so I was working with Rent the Runway. Do you know what that is? So Rent the Runway is the famous fashion company or show. And so Rent the Runway is the cloud version of it, where you can rent dresses as opposed to buying them for 10% of the cost.
Okay.
Most people don't really use expensive clothes beyond one party or one award show, say. So it's a pretty famous company, started by these 2 women from, I think, Harvard. So, so we worked for them, and our problem statement was to reduce the labor cost of one of their New Jersey warehouses by about 20%. So create a model that will overall optimize the supply chain process inside the warehouse.
Got it.
And my second company was called Concord Advice. It is a smaller company. It is a financial institution, fintech startup, say.
Yeah.
What they did was they used to lend short-term loans to people.
Okay.
And so our problem statement was to build a subscription model for them to avoid overdraft fee. Again, it's pretty hazy in my memory.
That's awesome. Though, I mean, we don't have to go, but it's just so cool that you get to solve real life problem and real world problem, and not just some professor writing you an assignment and you're solving that, which is still very valuable. But I think solving a problem for a startup, which is awesome. I think.
Exactly. And it doesn't even stop there. These are 4 core courses.
Right.
And then you can still take 8 more courses of your choosing.
Okay, so
I picked quite a few courses from the business school. Specifically, I took a lot of data science courses because I realized that I had no computer science knowledge. My background was in research and energy engineering.
Yeah.
So I took courses. I took a machine learning course, which is probably the most difficult course that I've taken till date.
Yeah.
Just so much math and probability.
Yes, I agree.
Another course, which was my favorite course, is called Analytics in Action.
Okay.
It was in my 3rd semester. Even here, again, the entire course is to work with a startup. And here the twist is that you get to work with Columbia Business School grads. So it was 2 of us from engineering school and 3 business school grads, and we're put together in the same class.
Nice.
And so you get their perspective of how they think. And it's very different from how you're thinking. So we worked with a food delivery startup. And in this case, so in my previous projects, I was kind of the project manager or product manager. In this project, I was a data scientist, which was very new for me.
Yeah.
I didn't even think I could be a data scientist. But I worked on a lot of modeling for this project.
Okay, that's so cool. I mean, so in total, how many classes did you have to take?
Totally 12 classes, 36 credits.
36 credits. Wow. So you must be busy. Do you have to take summer course as well?
So I was interning at Salesforce over the summer.
Gotcha.
And that also gives you 1.5 credits.
Got it.
Which is great. So was I busy?
I mean, you will have to take 12 credits, so that's like 4 classes.
4 classes per semester.
That's a lot of classes.
I think this was my average day. Again, there were outliers, but this was an average day. I would wake up at 10-ish a.m. And I know that sounds late, but when I get to the end of my day,
it sounds
you'll
late,
understand.
especially for the person who wakes up at 4. So.
Right. I used to sleep at 4. That's why I woke up at 10 a.m. So
that's awesome.
It's not awesome. Whoever's watching this, don't ever do that. Just
wake up at 4.
Sleep on time. But yeah, I woke up at 10 a.m. I was living in the basement of an apartment. So where there was a tiny window there. There'll be sunlight streaming through that. And I would get ready in like 10 minutes quickly and rush to class. I had a class at 10:20 a.m. So, 10:30. I only had 10 minutes to get ready. And then I would be checking my phone to see did I get any interview calls, any emails, interesting emails on the way. I would not be, I wouldn't eat until the class got over at say 1 p.m.
Okay.
And then I would go to one of the roadside carts in New York where you can get $5 food. Have you ever been to New York?
No.
Okay, so
One of my places to be. I
Right.
have to go, yeah.
you should, because New York, for all of its expensive, and lavish, what people say about it, you have these roadside carts, food carts, where you
Yeah.
can get food for $5. So that was my spot every afternoon. I would go there, and specifically there was this one food cart which had Indian food. So they used to have, what do you call that? Rajma
Oh, yeah. Rajma
and
chawal.
rice. Rajma
Yeah,
chawal,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
It was so good. And they even had chana chawal at times.
Nice.
And then I would get that, go to the library, sit there for the next 3-4 hours,
Yeah.
work on assignments and projects. And then evening there was another class sometimes. That's another 3 hours. And then after that's done, I would go for maybe an event, if there is any. If not, I would go meet my friends in a specific place called Mud Building, which was open 24/7. So, and then I would stay there until 10 p.m. We would all go have dinner,
Yeah.
chit chat, have a lot of fun. And then I'd stay there again until 4 a.m. and go to sleep. And
Nice.
this,
No, that's
had a lot of
awesome.
fun.
And is Columbia a party school?
I'm not a party person, so I don't know if
If it
Columbia
is.
is.
I was just checking.
But I've never heard of Columbia being a party
party
school,
school.
though.
Yeah, I mean it's Ivy League, so I was just like, I don't know what's the vibe of Ivy League. People talk a lot about Ivy League. So.
Although we had a boat cruise every semester.
Wow.
It was fantastic. So thanks to the I think they call themselves EGSC, like the student council
Yeah.
for grad school.
Yeah.
They would organize a boat cruise towards the end of each semester.
Okay.
And it was the first time in my life I'd ever even been on a boat.
Yeah.
So it was at night though, pretty cold.
Yes.
Still, we would kind of go around Staten Island. You can see the Empire State Building. Sorry, what is it? You can see the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
And you would just be dancing all night on a boat. A lot of food.
That is
a lot
awesome.
of alcohol. So it was so much fun.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, now moving on to the main part, which is how did you find Salesforce internship? Because assuming your full-time job, which is right now, got converted from your internship, and I want to talk about your strategy of finding an internship as a product manager.